Welcome to English Speak Pulse. I'm Danielle, and let me ask you something that might hit closer than you expect. Why is it that you know English? You've studied it for years. You understand what people are saying. But when it's your turn to speak, your mind suddenly goes quiet. Not empty, just blocked. You feel the thought, but the words don't come. And the harder you try, the worse it gets. That's not an English problem. That's a brain problem. And joining me today is my co-host, Sarah.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm Sarah, and here's a truth most English learners never hear. Your brain was never trained to speak English. It was trained to analyze, to translate, to avoid mistakes. So when you try to speak, your brain doesn't help you. It stops you.
And that's why fluency feels impossible for so many people. Not because English is hard, but because the brain is running the wrong system. A system designed for exams, for silence, for safety, not for real communication.
In this episode, we're not teaching you more vocabulary. We're not giving you grammar rules. We're doing something far more important. We're teaching you how to retrain your brain, to release English naturally, without fear, without translation, without overthinking.
You'll learn why your brain freezes under pressure, how fluent speakers think differently, and how you can build automatic English speech, step by step, even if you've struggled for years.
If you've ever said, "I know English, but I can't speak it," this episode is for you. Because today, you're not learning English. You're learning how to unlock it.
This is English Speak Pulse, where English stops living in your head and starts flowing from your voice.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling what is, I think, arguably the biggest, most frustrating paradox for anyone who learns English.
Oh, absolutely.
That huge, seemingly insurmountable gap between knowing the language and actually speaking it.
It's the ultimate cognitive roadblock, isn't it? You know the scenario perfectly. I mean, you ace the exams, your TOEFL scores are high, you can read these complex articles.
Right.
And yet, the moment someone asks you a simple question in a real conversation, the words just evaporate. That fluency you have when you're writing just vanishes and you freeze up.
Exactly. And if fluency were just a function of knowledge, then, every advanced learner would be fluent.
Which they're clearly not.
And the fact that this isn't the case suggests we've been, diagnosing the problem all wrong. We spend years asking, how can I improve my English?
Right. More vocabulary, more grammar.
But the sources we've looked at for this deep dive, they argue that the fundamental question should really be shifted to something more like, why doesn't my brain let me speak the English I already know?
And what's emerging from this analysis is that the issue isn't really a deficit in your language skill. You have the knowledge. It's more an issue of internal programming, a behavior.
So it's not a knowledge problem, it's a performance problem.
Precisely. And the core thesis here is actually really reassuring. Your brain is performing exactly as it was instructed to. It's just that the instructions it got were, for the wrong task.
So our mission for you today is a bit of a cognitive deep clean. We're going to unpack that old programming, those mental instructions that create this internal firewall against fluency, and show you how you can start rewriting them for, smooth, real-time expression.
Let's start with where it all begins, ironically, with traditional education.
Yeah, let's unpack that. When you look back at how most people learn a language in a formal setting, what behaviors are actually being rewarded?
It's a great question, because the system rewards behaviors that are fundamentally the opposite of what you need to speak successfully.
The opposite? How so?
Well, think about a classroom. Success is defined by what? By silence during a reading task, by careful translation, and, above all else, by accuracy. The rule drilled into every learner is to avoid mistakes.
At all costs.
At all costs. You were trained to stop, to analyze, to stay quiet until you were absolutely sure you were perfect.
And that kind of training teaches the brain a very specific and, as it turns out, a highly detrimental rule for speaking.
It does. The rule is basically English is something to be checked and analyzed, not quickly released and expressed. It's an approach that's built on maximum safety.
But speaking demands the total opposite of that safety training, doesn't it?
The total opposite. Speaking requires speed, it requires risk, it requires a continuous release of ideas, and, it requires a tolerance for imperfection.
Which is completely at odds with that academic mindset.
Completely. And the sources explain that when you try to switch from that safe analytical environment to the risky high-speed environment of a conversation, your brain just activates this powerful protection system.
It sees the attempt to speak as dangerous.
It does, because the risk of embarrassment is high. And that's where the internal checking mechanism kicks in. The brain uses its strongest tool, that analysis mode, and starts running checks.
Is this the right tense? Is that the right word?
Did I use the correct preposition? What if I sound stupid? And that checking process, it's sequential, it's slow. And while it runs, the window for a natural, fast conversation just slams shut.
And the brain sees that silence not as a failure, but as a success.
Exactly. It thinks, great, I've protected you from the threat of making a mistake in public. The silence is a protective act, a cognitive freeze.
Okay, but here's the part that's really, I think, counterintuitive. That checking system we just talked about, it actually gets stronger when you study more English conventionally, right?
That's the crux of what we call the knowledge trap.
The knowledge trap.
Yeah, the research is pretty clear in this. Studying more advanced grammar, more vocabulary, it increases your analysis power. It makes you exponentially better at spotting errors.
Which unfortunately translates into being better at stopping yourself from speaking.
Precisely. It's like pouring high-octane fuel into the wrong engine. You're just boosting the power of your own internal editor.
And if fluency is a behavior driven by speed, you're training for slowness.
And this leads directly to that surprising paradox you see everywhere. The learner who has basic, simple English often speaks with far more fluency and confidence than the advanced learner with this huge vocabulary.
Why is that? Is it because the person with simple English just learned to prioritize the flow of communication over perfect grammar?
They learned to release, not inspect. That's the key phrase. They accepted that their basic output would be imperfect. And by accepting that, they just bypass the brain's internal checking firewall.
So they built a habit of speaking quickly.
While the advanced learner built the habit of perpetual self-correction. The advanced learner has way too many complex rules to check against in real time.
So, if the problem isn't the verb tenses or how many idioms you know, the critical shift is realizing that fluency isn't just about language skill. It's, as you said, a brain behavior.
And that's the most empowering realization, I think, because behaviors, unlike some inherent talent, they can be systematically retrained.
Right.
The goal isn't to erase all that amazing knowledge you already have, not at all. It's about adding a new operating system on top of it, a system that's optimized specifically for real-time expression.
Let's dive into those two competing operating systems then. The sources are pretty specific about them. We have analysis mode and expression mode.
Right. So analysis mode, that's your default for exams and writing. It's slow, it's careful, it prioritizes absolute accuracy. It's perfect for writing a flawless essay.
But it's a massive bottleneck when you need speed.
Exactly. It's deadly for speaking.
And expression mode then is the goal state.
Yes. Expression mode is what fluent speakers operate in. It's fast, fluid, and it's inherently imperfect. It prioritizes the continuous flow of thought over perfection.
It's like the difference between reading the car's manual and actually driving the car.
That is the perfect analogy. Analysis mode is reading the owner's manual, understanding the physics, the laws of momentum. Expression mode is just getting in the car and driving. You don't think about the friction coefficient when you're taking a corner. The skill becomes procedural.
And most advanced learners are stuck trying to read the manual while they're driving in a Formula One race. The cognitive load must be overwhelming.
That's the key mechanism. When you try to speak while you're stuck in analysis mode, your working memory gets instantly overloaded. You're trying to retrieve the word and check the grammar at the same time.
And that demand, that pressure, is what leads to the freeze.
It is, and this explains why that freeze is worst when the pressure is highest, in a presentation or in front of an important client. The brain is calculating the potential consequences of failure.
So when the pressure mounts, the brain just defaults to what it knows.
It defaults to safety. And safety means minimizing risk. And the lowest risk action in language is silence, or maybe retreating to your native language to translate.
The brain isn't being malicious.
Yeah.
It's just using the only tool it was trained to use when accuracy was the most important thing.
Exactly. It sees silence as successfully avoiding embarrassment. So the path to fluency isn't about more vocabulary. It's about decoupling the act of speaking from the fear of a bad outcome.
It's about convincing the brain that expression mode is safe.
It is, which raises the big question. How do fluent speakers do it? How do they deal with that internal pressure and the fear of making mistakes?
Well, the sources suggest they didn't magically remove the fear. They trained their brain to override the fear response using behavior, not logic.
Right. They developed what the research calls a tolerance for imperfection through very specific kinds of practice.
How so?
They trained their brain that a mistake isn't some catastrophic event, but just a necessary cost of speed. They practice speaking without correcting themselves, focusing obsessively on just continuing the sentence, releasing the thought, even if they knew they just made a mistake.
So they fundamentally rewrote that internal rule. The old command was, English has to be perfect.
And the new command their brain accepted was, speaking English is safe, even when it's imperfect. And once that safety rule is firmly established, speech becomes procedural. It just flows, like driving or tying your shoes.
This brings us to the core mandate of this whole retraining idea then. If you're an advanced learner who struggles with fluency, the most important takeaway is this. You cannot think your way into fluency.
No, you absolutely have to train your way into it.
Fluency isn't about understanding a grammar tense more deeply. It's about repeating the right behavior, that active release, until your brain just accepts it as the new normal.
We have to create habits of immediate expression, not habits of immediate inspection. And the research gives us a really clear roadmap for this, a kind of toolkit of specific goals that are all focused on removing that internal pressure.
So it's not more grammar homework, it's cognitive conditioning.
It's pure cognitive conditioning.
Okay, let's detail this toolkit for the listener. The first goal is, directly addressing the biggest hurdle, stopping the brain from overchecking. How do we break that habit of internal editing?
This requires really intentional practice where you force yourself to maintain speed. The moment you start thinking, oh, what's the right preposition here? You've already lost. You have to practice saying the first thing that comes to mind, even if it feels incomplete or wrong.
You have to temporarily suspend your analytical skills.
You do, and prioritize momentum. Second, you have to actively work to reduce the fear response. Fear is just the expectation of a negative outcome, right?
Right.
So you reduce it by repeatedly proving to your brain that the negative thing you're afraid of, catastrophic failure, total embarrassment, it doesn't actually happen when you make a small mistake.
So you need to create low-stakes environments to practice being imperfect.
Deliberately imperfect. The brain needs to register that a grammar error does not lead to a physical threat. That repetition is what disarms the protection system.
Okay, third goal. Building automatic English release. Training the brain to jump straight into expression mode without that firewall.
It's entirely procedural. Think back to driving. You build that muscle memory by doing the action hundreds of times without thinking about the theory. For language, this means doing speaking tasks that are just too fast for analysis.
Like what?
Like describing something you saw 30 seconds ago, summarizing a really fast-paced video clip, or just describing your immediate physical environment out loud. The speed itself prevents the checking mechanism from even activating.
And fourth, retraining thinking speed. The speed of a real conversation is way faster than writing.
Way faster. This is about creating mental shortcuts. The brain has to learn to link an idea directly to English words without that mandatory detour through your native language. If you find yourself translating in your head, you're in analysis mode.
So the training there is about forced speed drills.
Yeah, things where you try to respond within 1 second. You prioritize the act of communicating over the perfect structure.
And finally, the overarching goal, creating calm speaking habits. This can't be about forcing anything. It has to be about building a consistent, imperfect flow.
Sustained practice is everything. We're not aiming for a flawless performance. We're aiming for consistency and fluidity. The whole retraining process is about making expression mode feel normal, comfortable, and most importantly, safe.
And if we bring this entire deep dive back into focus, the fundamental realization for you, the listener, is this. Your current internal struggle. It isn't a sign of failure. It's just the result of your brain following old instructions.
Old instructions it learned years ago that prioritized accuracy and self-protection above all else. And those instructions, as we've seen, can absolutely be rewritten through behavioral practice.
The power to unlock the knowledge you already have isn't in cramming more rules.
It's in changing the way your brain relates to the act of speaking itself.
So what does this all mean for you right now as you look for that first step?
I think the key to unlocking fluency really lies in implementing that tolerance for imperfection rule immediately.
Yeah, challenge yourself today to find a setting. It could be just using a voice recorder on your phone or speaking to a trusted friend who won't judge you, where your only task is to practice releasing ideas quickly.
And continue your sentence even if you know you just made a grammatical error.
Don't stop. Do not go back and correct it.
Your single goal in that moment should be to make your brain feel that the act of speaking, even when it's messy and imperfect, is entirely safe. That's how the new Fluent operating system gets installed.
We are diving deep today into one of the most frustrating, universal yet completely misunderstood experiences that every single person learning a second language shares. I mean, that moment where you know the words, you get the question, but the second someone expects you to speak, your mind just goes blank.
Utterly blank.
Not slow, not confused, just nothing.
It's the brain freeze. And it's genuinely painful, right? Because you feel this huge disconnect. You know the information is in there somewhere.
Yeah, 5 seconds ago I was fluent in my head.
Exactly. But the moment the pressure hits, the whole system just locks up. It's a total communication jam.
And the immediate assumption, the thing we always tell ourselves, is so self-critical. My English is weak, or I just didn't study enough.
We blame a failure of knowledge.
Always.
And that is the absolute biggest misunderstanding we want to, just shatter right now. Because the core finding from the sources we looked at is this. A frozen brain doesn't mean a weak brain. It doesn't mean your English is bad. It means you have an untrained speaking system.
Untrained, okay.
And this is critical. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed and, frankly, trained to do.
Which is to protect you.
To protect you.
Okay, let's unpack that, because that just shits the whole conversation. Our mission for this deep dive is to get into the biology of that freeze, to move the focus away from weak language skills and toward untrained nervous system response. Because if you understand the wiring, you can stop blaming yourself.
Right.
And you can start to strategically retrain the system.
Yes. Fluency at this level isn't really a language problem, it's a nervous system problem.
So we're pulling from expert discussions on high-stakes performance language psychology.
And looking for those pieces that explain why this happens, but more importantly, how to fix it by working with your biology, not fighting against it.
So let's start with the most basic biological setup. Your brain, as I understand it, has 2 main operating modes when it faces a challenge: safe mode and threat mode.
Right. In your native language, you're always in safe mode. The pathways are secure. There's, zero fear about making a grammar mistake. It just doesn't register.
It's just communication. The system is smooth, automatic, safe.
But when you try to speak English, especially in a professional setting or with strangers, the brain can just flip instantly.
Into threat mode.
Into threat mode. And what's fascinating here is that this is a biological switch. It's not logical. The brain isn't asking, do I know this verb tense?
No.
It's asking a much, much older question.
Am I safe right now?
Precisely. Am I safe? And that is the engine of the entire freeze. Your brain sees speaking this language under pressure as a social threat.
And the triggers for that are so powerful, aren't they? They connect to our deepest fears.
Oh, absolutely. The fear of being judged, the fear of sounding stupid.
Making a mistake that could affect your job or how people see you. Embarrassment.
When your brain detects that cluster of social threats, it activates the ancient survival mechanism. Fight, flight, or freeze.
And you get that surge of adrenaline, cortisol. The brain's alarm system, the amygdala, just takes over.
It takes the controls.
So you can't exactly run away from a colleague who just asked you a question.
And you definitely can't start a fight over it.
Which leaves one option.
Freeze. The amygdala, when it's in charge, it essentially starts shutting down non-essential systems. And to the survival brain, higher cognitive functions, they're non-essential.
So things like planning, building a sentence, recalling a specific word.
It shuts down resources to all of that. That blank mind you feel is literally your own protective mechanism kicking in. It's disabling the very functions that it thinks are causing the danger.
That makes so much sense. It really explains why, 5 minutes after the conversation is over,
the perfect answer comes to you.
Yes. The most articulate, perfect response just floods your mind. Because the threat has passed.
The threat has passed, the amygdala has calmed down, and the chemistry shifts back. Safe mode returns.
And all that knowledge is accessible again.
Exactly. Your brain wasn't weak, the knowledge wasn't gone, it was just temporarily redirected for survival.
So let's get even more specific about what that freeze state does. You mentioned 3 key functions that just shut down.
Yeah, we call it the cognitive triple threat. First, word recall. You know the word, but it is locked behind this, wall of panic.
Inaccessible.
Second is sentence building, the ability to string words together in a coherent grammatical way. And third, which is maybe the most frustrating, is just thinking speed. Everything slows down.
And the mechanism is just the brain diverting energy.
It's pure energy conservation. It's pulling power away from those complex language functions and pushing it all towards threat assessment.
So it doesn't matter if you have 10,000 words in your vocabulary.
Yeah.
If the brain is in threat mode.
You can't access them. It's like trying to run complex software when the power's been rerouted to the emergency lights.
This explains the huge contradictions so many learners feel, right? They can think just fine in English when they're alone.
Perfectly. Or they speak well in a low-pressure class with a teacher they trust. They can write brilliant emails.
But then a real-time high-stakes conversation happens, and it all falls apart.
It's not about the knowledge you have stored. It's all about your ability to access that knowledge under pressure.
And that access depends entirely on the state of your nervous system.
Precisely. You can't just learn 50 more idioms and expect your nervous system to magically calm down.
Okay, so this brings us to a really important myth. Because the standard advice is always study more, learn more words.
Right.
We have to bust the myth that just cramming more grammar and vocab will eventually stop the freezing.
That is the critical myth to bust. The freezing doesn't stop with more academic knowledge. It stops with familiarity and repetition under low pressure.
Low pressure.
You cannot train the brain to relax by constantly throwing it into high-stress situations. That's not how it works. It's like exposure therapy for a phobia. It has to be gradual and controlled.
So if I just keep forcing myself into meetings with my boss, hoping I'll get used to it, I'm probably just making it worse.
You're reinforcing the panic pathway. You're teaching your nervous system again and again that this activity equals danger.
So how does the brain change?
The brain changes its default settings only when it sees proof. This is the core concept. The brain needs proof, not motivation.
That's powerful. So telling yourself to be confident or just do it.
It doesn't work. The brain doesn't listen to pep talks. Motivation is a feeling. Brain chemistry is a reality.
So the brain needs data. It needs evidence.
Yes. Empirical evidence that speaking English is survivable. The proof looks like this. I made a mistake and the world didn't end. Or I spoke slowly and people actually waited and they understood me.
So confidence isn't something you can just decide to have.
No, you can't force it. Confidence is a memory.
It's a memory.
That's all it is. It's a statistical database in your brain. Your brain becomes confident after it has stored enough memories of safe, successful speaking moments. Until then, it defaults to caution.
Which feels like freezing.
Which is the freeze.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about another big cause of this, which is more of a habit. The planning trap.
Oh, this is a huge one, especially for diligent learners. They try to take their writing skills and apply them to speaking.
Meaning they try to build the perfect, grammatically correct sentence in their head before they even open their mouth.
Yes, and that silent construction process creates this huge, awkward delay in a conversation.
And the other person is just staring at you, waiting, which increases the pressure.
Instantly. The delay triggers threat mode. The brain goes, danger, high expectations, and boom. The system freezes mid-sentence. All that beautiful silent work just vanishes.
But a fluent speaker, they don't do that. They just start talking and trust the sentence will form itself.
They trust the flow because their motor pathways for speaking are so well trained, they're automatic.
Which brings us to a really crucial brain rule from the performance research.
Yes, fluency happens during movement, not planning. You are literally better at finding your words while your mouth is moving than you are in the silence before.
Silence increases fear. Speech reduces it.
Even a little bit of speech. That's why those short responses feel so much easier, saying, yes, or not sure, or could you repeat that?
It's not just filler.
No, it breaks the silence, it starts the physical movement, and that helps the brain relax and lets the other words start to flow.
It's all transitions perfectly into maybe the biggest idea here.
Yeah.
English speaking is a motor skill.
Fundamentally, a motor skill, just like playing the guitar or learning to swim.
You don't think your way into riding a bike. You have to move your way into it. You could read 100 books on guitar theory.
You know everything there is to know. But the first time you try to play a song, your fingers will freeze. The modal pathways aren't there yet.
Reading and listening are obviously vital, but they train the input system.
Exactly. The actual act of speaking is controlled by different motor pathways. Muscle memory in your tongue, your jaw. If you don't practice the output, those pathways stay weak and slow.
So that classic learner who understands 90% of a movie but can't order a coffee without panicking.
It's not a knowledge problem. It's an output motor skill deficit combined with a nervous system that's stuck on high alert.
So if the problem is the nervous system is in threat mode, the solution isn't to just be tougher, it's to create a smarter training environment.
Yes. If you only practice in high-pressure situations, job interviews, big presentations, you are just reinforcing the threat. You're guaranteeing a freeze.
And that cycle of failure just creates more anxiety for the next time.
Exactly. The training has to move to low-pressure zones, places where the brain can learn what safety feels like.
So what does that look like practically? I mean, how does talking to yourself in a car help you in a real meeting?
It's about building a foundational, safe pathway first. So speaking alone, reading a book out loud just to get the feel of the words.
Practicing the physical articulation.
Right. Or speaking very slowly with a friend who you know is supportive. Starting with simple, short phrases until those feel easy and automatic.
So when I practice in the car, I'm giving my brain proof that I can say that sentence smoothly without the adrenaline of being watched.
You are creating a memory of a safe output experience. And that is the powerful truth you have to internalize. You don't become fluent by surviving pressure.
You become fluent by removing the pressure first.
You remove it strategically.
Yeah.
And once the brain feels genuinely safe accessing and using the language, then speed, complexity, confidence, they all emerge naturally.
Let's circle back one last time to that feeling of self-blame. Because so many people live with this for years, feeling like they're just failing as a learner.
And we really want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with you. There's no failure in your ability to learn. Your brain is just doing its job protecting you.
So your task isn't to be tougher. It's to be a better trainer for your own brain.
A smarter trainer. Change the environment, change your habits, set realistic expectations. This is a motor skill, not a test of character.
And when you finally get that, when you realize it's just biology, something shifts emotionally, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. The panic stops. You stop trying to force it. You allow for patience. And that patience, knowing you're working with your body, is the most critical ingredient.
It changes it from a fight against yourself into just a training program.
Exactly.
So the core lesson of this deep dive seems pretty clear. Fluency isn't about bravery. Fluency is familiarity.
That's it. Your nervous system doesn't need a heroic burst of courage. It needs consistent, predictable repetition without the danger of public failure.
And when that familiarity grows, the anxiety doesn't just vanish in some big dramatic moment.
No, it's quieter than that. It just fades. You'll finish a difficult conversation and maybe an hour later you'll think back and realize,
wait a minute, I just spoke and I didn't panic.
I just flowed. That quiet moment of success fundamentally rewrites the chemical expectation for the next time. It's proof.
So since we know confidence is just a memory built from enough safe moments, maybe the final thought is to ask yourself, how can you engineer one small safe moment today?
It could be tiny.
Right. Even just practicing a 2-sentence answer to a question you expect to get, saying it out loud to the mirror.
Just give your brain one tiny piece of undeniable proof that the system is safe. And then just watch how that one small act starts to shift your default setting from threat to flow.
If you were listening to this, chances are you're already highly competent in English. And yet, you've probably felt it. That specific, just crushing mental exhaustion after a long conversation. You might believe the path to fluency is, just about speaking faster. Or maybe mastering the perfect conditional tense. But based on the stack of sources we pulled for this deep dive, we have a fundamental reframe for you. Fluent speakers don't just speak fast, they actually think differently. They use a cognitive architecture that's built for efficiency, not just speed.
That's the core insight, really. When people see someone who they'd call fluent, they aren't timing their words per minute.
No.
What they're noticing is the complete absence of struggle. There are no long pauses, no visible stress, no heavy planning before they start talking.
The words just come.
They seem to arrive effortlessly, and that's because the thinking behind them is already streamlined. It's already prepared.
So our mission today is clear. We're going to expose the cognitive load that leads to that exhaustion you feel. We'll identify the key mistakes learners make in their thought process, and then we'll give you some very specific training tools. By the end of this deep dive, you'll understand how to actively shift your brain into that calm, efficient, automatic thinking style of a fluent speaker. Okay, so let's unpack this and jump straight into the biggest cognitive error we found in the source material. What is that fundamental mistake learners are making when they try to go from a thought to actually speaking?
Well, the foundational error is that the non-fluent speaker tries to think in full, grammatically complete sentences before they even open their mouth.
Before they even start.
Yes. And this isn't just inefficient, it forces the brain into the state of constant internal checklist management.
And what does that checklist even look like? What's going on in their head?
It sounds something like this. Okay, how do I say this correctly? Which verb tense should I use here? Or, wait, is this sentence right? Should I maybe rephrase it to be more formal? It's the voice of that internal critic running in real time, basically dictating the whole structure.
That kind of mental multitasking sounds completely unsustainable, especially in a real conversation where you have to respond, instantly.
It is, because this kind of exhaustive analytical thinking is what's defined as slow thinking. And slow thinking, unfortunately, is the absolute enemy of conversational fluency.
It has to be.
You're forcing yourself to prioritize grammar formulation over just communicating. You end up spending maybe 90% of your mental energy on syntax and only 10% on the actual meaning.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the fluent alternative is almost totally counterintuitive. Fluent speakers are not internally composing these perfect full sentences. They aren't worrying about the conditional perfect tense until the moment they actually need it.
They shift their focus completely. Instead of thinking in detailed linguistic structure, they think in broad strokes.
Like what?
Meaning direction and intention. The core cognitive principle they rely on is that language automatically follows meaning, not the other way around.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a complete reversal of priority.
Just total reversal.
The fluent speaker decides what they want to achieve with their speech, the goal, before they decide how to structure it with language.
While the learner, on the other hand, often starts by searching their memory for complex words or grammar patterns first. They're desperately hoping that the structure they find will somehow fit the meaning they want to convey.
They're trying to build the house before they've even looked at the floor plan.
That's a great way to put it.
I understand the idea of thinking in intention, but I can hear a listener asking, doesn't thinking in abstract concepts and intentions just make your speech vague? How do you stop that from becoming, just a series of incomplete ideas?
That's a really critical distinction to make. It's not about vague abstraction. It's about identifying the function of your upcoming speech.
The function.
Think of intention as your brain's GPS setting. You don't need to plan every single turn before you start driving, but you absolutely have to know the destination.
Right.
The language system then just becomes the engine that finds the most efficient road to get there.
Let's make this tangible with that specific anecdote from the sources. So imagine you are in a high-stakes meeting and you need to politely disagree with someone's proposal.
Okay. For the non-fluent learner, that situation immediately triggers the grammar search mode. They're thinking, how do I form a polite disagreement sentence using, maybe, the perfect conditional and a modal verb to soften it?
Their focus is entirely on linguistic form. The mental energy is spiking and the response is really delayed.
Yes, but the fluent speaker just bypasses all of that. Their internal thought is purely intention-driven. It's just, I disagree, but my goal here is to be respectful and collaborative.
And that high-level intention, crucially, is what activates the necessary language patterns or formulas that are already stored in their long-term memory.
Exactly. It doesn't activate individual words or grammar rules.
All right, so the brain understands the required function. Because the intention was set to polite disagreement, the language system instantly pulls up chunks like, I see your point, but, or maybe, I understand that approach, however.
Precisely. They are not planning the conjugation of the verb see or where the comma goes. The intention disagreeing respectfully directed the retrieval of the right low-effort language structure. The goal came first, and the language followed. No conscious grammar check needed.
That shift from sentence creation to pattern retrieval is where the massive cognitive saving happens. And speaking of patterns, that brings us right to the concept of chunking. Our sources really highlight that fluent speakers aren't stacking sentences word by word like laying individual bricks.
No, they're retrieving prefabricated, ready-to-go units. We call them chunks. And these are not just phrases, they're entire concepts stored together as a single cognitive thing.
Could you give us some examples of these high-utility chunks?
Sure. It could be anything from simple functional openers like, I think that, or the reason is, or what I mean is, to more complex phrases like, if I were you, I would.
Or even, it looks like we need to.
Exactly. The brain stores these not as 5 separate words, but as one integrated unit of meaning.
I like to think of it as cooking a meal. Non-fluent speaking is like trying to follow a complex recipe from scratch. You have to measure every ingredient, check every step, constantly monitor the temperature. But chunking is like using high-quality, pre-prepared ingredients, or even a ready meal. It just takes far less cognitive energy.
That's a perfect analogy for efficiency. This retrieval mechanism is the foundation of speed and, maybe more importantly, of calmness. You're asking your brain to retrieve something it already knows, which is fast and automatic, instead of forcing it to create something new under pressure, which is slow and really demanding.
And if we go back to that feeling of exhaustion, this makes perfect sense. Learners feel mentally fried because they're constantly trying to create while multitasking. They're translating from their native language, checking grammar rules, choosing the perfect word, and monitoring their own mistakes all at the same time.
That cognitive load is astronomical.
And that's what we need to eliminate.
It is. When we look at the thinking pathway of a non-fluent speaker, the bottleneck, the part that drains all the energy, is always the same. The pathway is idea, native language translation, English formulation, speaking.
That native language step in the middle, the translation, that's what makes it feel so slow and so heavy.
Exactly. And the fluent pathway is simply idea, English formulation, speaking. That missing middle step is what creates the sensation of speed and naturalness. It makes a conversation feel light.
But if that step is so inefficient, why is it so stubborn? Why does the brain keep defaulting back to translation?
It's a cognitive habit. It's also a security mechanism. When your brain is under pressure, or when it hasn't built up strong enough automatic English pathways, it defaults to the strongest system it knows, your native language.
Like a safety blanket.
It is a safety blanket. It's like a computer reverting to safe mode when the main program crashes. You need specific training to bypass that habit and build new, reliable pathways in English so the brain trusts the English system enough to let go of that blanket.
I think the key link here is about brain patterns. We are pattern recognition machines, right? Our brains love familiarity, repetition, predictability, because those things require much less energy.
Absolutely. And that's why if you really listen to a highly fluent speaker, they often rely on simple structures. They reuse familiar words with confidence.
And that's not a weakness.
Not at all. It's a sign of maximum cognitive efficiency. Why spend half a second searching for a fancy synonym when a perfectly reliable, familiar word will get the job done? So, before we get to the exercises, let's just lock in the overall fluency thinking rule. Achieving conversational fluency means learning to think less, not more. We want less self-monitoring, less grammar checking, less translation.
And on the flip side, we want more clear intention, more momentum, and more trust in the system that your practice is building. But understanding this cognitive architecture is only step one. We have to change the physical practice. You can't shift your thinking just by grasping it intellectually. You have to train the new habits. So our sources provide 3 specific, very practical exercises to do this.
The first, and maybe the most powerful, is the intention first exercise. We touched on it, but here's how you actually practice it. Before you speak, whether you're alone or with a partner, just stop and label your intention. Don't ask, what sentence should I say?
Instead, ask, what action do I want to perform? Am I explaining something? Am I asking for clarification? Am I expressing a strong opinion or just providing a justification?
Precisely. If your intention is justification, your brain starts priming the language of cause and effect. Because, since the reason is, if you label your intention as query, your brain primes question forms. By forcing yourself to label the function first, you bypass the grammar center and go straight to the meaning center, the efficient route.
Okay, the second exercise directly targets that slow creation problem we talked about. It's called chunk activation.
Right. To do this, you have to deliberately strengthen those retrieval pathways. So choose 5 to 10 common high-utility chunks, maybe your top 5 conversation starters, like, to be honest, or one thing I noticed is...
Did you write them down?
Write them down. Then practice speaking for 1 full minute on any topic you want. Describe your morning, argue about something, but using only those chunks as the starting points for every new idea. And crucially, do this quickly. Don't let yourself slow down to self-correct.
So you're building that muscle memory for retrieval. You're training the speed and reliability of those units, making them the default setting instead of that old translation loop. And finally, the third training tool is one idea thinking. This is all about promoting mental clarity before you add complexity.
Learners often try to cram a justification, a condition, and a nuanced opinion all into one long, convoluted sentence. They think complex sentences equal fluency.
But that just guarantees cognitive overload.
It does. It requires that exhausting internal checklist. So instead, force yourself to think in one clear, complete idea at a time. State the idea, put a mental period on it, and then start the next idea. Forget linking words or complex details at first. Just focus on delivering clear, simple thoughts, one after the other.
Clarity before complexity. It sounds like you're training your brain to find frequent mental finish lines, which would reduce a lot of stress.
Exactly. And when you implement these 3 exercises consistently, you'll find that the immediate outcome isn't just faster speech. It's something far more valuable. It's calmness.
And that calmness is the physical sign of efficiency.
It is. Fluent speakers sound calm because their cognitive systems are calm. They operate with certainty. They're not agonizing over the internal script asking, was that perfect?
No.
They have certainty in the intention. I know what I want to communicate, and the language will deliver it simply. This certainty reduces fear, which reduces the brain's tendency to panic and revert to that slow, heavy translation mode.
So to wrap up, let's summarize the most powerful mental shift our sources emphasized. It's so simple, but it's transformative. Stop thinking like a student focused on tests and start thinking like a communicator focused on conversation.
That difference in mindset, it defines success in fluency. The student worries about correctness, the red pen, the grammar rule book, avoiding mistakes.
But the
communicator focuses on connection. They prioritize transferring meaning and establishing a bond, even if the delivery isn't grammatically pristine.
And connection, not correction, is what authentic fluency really sounds like in the end. As you adopt this new way of thinking, you'll start to notice tangible results. Fewer of those long, awkward pauses because your brain is retrieving patterns instead of creating sentences from scratch. You'll have faster response times, simpler sentences delivered with confidence, and a massive increase in your mental energy. Your brain is no longer fighting itself in that internal translation loop.
And if fluency is about connection, then maximum cognitive efficiency should be your only goal. So here's a final thought for you to mull over this week. If you accept that your brain loves familiarity and repetition, what 5 simple, familiar, high-utility structures can you consciously commit to reusing again and again, starting today? Make those 5 your default setting to drastically increase your cognitive efficiency and free up your mental bandwidth to focus purely on the message. That is where the calm, efficient, fluent thinking really begins.
If you are learning English, or really any second language, you almost certainly hit this wall. It's this common roadblock.
Oh, absolutely.
You have a really good thought, an opinion, a smart question, and then right as you're about to say it, your brain just, it does this invisible conversion thing.
It's like the thought gets hijacked, doesn't it? Instead of just coming out in English, it gets snatched, translated back into your native language. You polish it there, and then you start this huge, slow process of translating it back into English.
And it feels so automatic. It creates that lag, that hesitation that just kills your confidence. That's why so many people say, I know the words, I just can't say them.
Exactly.
So that is exactly what we're diving into today. We're going to pull apart the wiring that keeps you in that translation trap.
And our mission here is really twofold. First, we need to understand why your brain does this. And here's a hint. It's not a weakness. It's actually a form of self-protection. And second, we're going to lay out 5 really solid, actionable strategies to basically teach your brain to replace that habit with direct, immediate English fluency. It's about building a new default setting.
A whole new default. Okay, let's unpack this. So if it's not a weakness, what is it?
It's a legacy system. I mean, think about it. When you first started learning, translation was your only tool. It was your safety net.
It's how you survived.
It's totally how you survived. It's like using crutches when you have a broken leg. They were necessary then. But the problem is your leg is healed now, and the crutches, that translation loop, that's what's stopping you from actually running.
That's a powerful way to look at it. So it's not about fighting a bad habit. It's more about letting go of an old tool you don't need anymore.
Exactly. You have to recognize that the system that saved you at the beginning is now the main thing holding you back.
So if we dig into the research on this, why did the brain build this habit so strongly in the first place? What are the main causes?
Well, there are three, and they make a lot of sense when you look at how the brain works. The first one is it's just timing.
Timing.
Yeah. English entered your life after your native language had already, set up shop and owned all the real estate in your brain. That native language pathway is like a superhighway. Everything else is a little dirt road.
And the brain loves efficiency, so it's always going to take the highway.
Always. But then there's the second piece, which is about how most of us were taught in school.
Right. The whole rules and grammar approach.
Precisely. We learned that the English word table means our native word for table. We were literally trained to connect the foreign sound to the native concept. So that middle step, that translation, was baked into the learning process from day one.
We never learned to connect table directly to the image of a table.
Almost never. And that leads to the third reason, which is probably the biggest driver of all. It's about emotion. It's fear. Speaking English, especially early on, felt unsafe. You're worried about mistakes, about being judged, about not being understood. The brain logs that as a low-level threat.
And in a threat situation, it doesn't take risks.
It never takes risks. It runs back to what's most secure, and the most secure place for your thoughts is always your native language. It's guaranteed to be error-free there.
So if you put all three of those together, the timing, the way we learn, the fear, it all just funnels into this one core idea, this familiarity principle.
That's it, 100%. The brain doesn't choose what's correct or even what's fastest. It chooses what feels familiar. Because to the brain, familiar equals safe.
And safety beats speed every single time. You're not fighting a bad habit, you're fighting a survival instinct.
You really are.
Which is a perfect segue into the actual cost of this instinct. Because that safety comes at a huge price in a real conversation, doesn't it?
Oh, a massive price. The price is delay. You've created this slow 4-step pipeline in your head. It's idea, the native language, then English translation, then finally you speak.
And that's fine if you're writing an email. You have time. But a conversation it's real time. There's no buffer.
There's zero buffer. And the moment that process creates even a tiny delay, the whole thing starts to collapse. You hesitate.
You feel it, they see it.
And that hesitation immediately triggers panic. And once panic is in the driver's seat, your brain just freezes. It's not even trying to translate anymore. It's just dealing with a massive stress response.
That feeling is the worst.
Yeah.
That brain freeze. And it's usually not because you don't know the word, it's because the system got overloaded.
The whole system crashed.
Which brings us to, I think, the most important truth in all of this. You can't just force yourself to stop. Willpower isn't the answer here.
It's the absolute core of the replacement mindset. Telling yourself, stop translating, just doesn't work. The brain doesn't listen to commands like that. It responds to replacement.
You have to build a new road.
You build a new road that's so good, so fast, and so familiar that the old one just becomes obsolete. The brain will choose it automatically.
So the goal is to make English so familiar that translation just isn't necessary anymore.
That's the entire game. And if you look at how fluent speakers operate, that's what's happening. They hear a word and it connects directly to a meaning.
Sound, meaning. No middle step.
No middle step. They hear coffee. They don't see the word in their own language. They see a cup. They smell it.
And this is conditioning, right? It's not some innate talent.
It's pure conditioning. It's a skill you build. And to build it, we actually have to go back to how we learned language as kids.
The natural way?
The natural path is always sound, then image, then meaning. Our brains are wired to process images way, way faster than words.
So, wait, you're saying we should try to think in pictures first before words? Yeah. That's a pretty big shift.
It is a profound shift, but it's the master key. It lets you bypass that internal dictionary that's slowing you down. Yeah. You prioritize the concept, not the word.
Okay, if that's the key, then how do we actually do it? How do we build that new neural highway? Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's get into the 5 methods to actually retrain the brain.
Let's do it. So method number 1 comes directly from what we were just saying. It's image-based thinking.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
For the next week, every time a thought pops into your head, your goal is to catch it. Before it becomes words in your native language, turn it into a mental movie, an image, a feeling.
So instead of thinking the sentence, I have so much work to do, I should What? Picture myself at my desk buried in papers.
Exactly. Picture yourself running around, juggling 10 things, feel the stress of it. Once that image or feeling is really clear in your mind, then let the English come.
Yeah, I'm so busy, or I'm swamped.
And it will come much more naturally because it's connected to a real concept, not a translated sentence. You're actively weakening the old habit.
I like that. Okay, what's method 2?
Method 2 tackles the main reason we translate in the first place. It's simplify before you speak.
Because complex thoughts are basically an invitation for translation.
A huge invitation. Your brain knows that a really complex idea needs complex grammar. And if it's not 100% confident in your English grammar for that, it's going to run back home to your native language to build the sentence safely.
So you have to be disciplined. You might have this really nuanced, brilliant thought.
Right, like this intricate geopolitical situation requires a carefully considered, multifaceted response.
Yeah, and you have to just kill that sentence before it starts.
You have to kill it and reduce it to something simple and manageable. This is difficult. Or we need to be careful. Fluency grows from confident simplicity, not from struggling with complexity.
That's a huge one.
Okay.
Method 3.
Method 3 is about changing the background noise in your head. Think in English micro thoughts.
So not trying to write perfect essays in your mind all day.
God, no. That's exhausting. This is the opposite. It's about integrating tiny little bits of English into your constant internal chatter.
Like,
Simple observations. Hungry. Too loud. That's fine. Need coffee. They're not even full sentences. They're just little labels.
why does that work so well?
Because it's about high-frequency repetition. Small, constant reps rewire the brain much faster than one big, painful effort. You're making English the default for the small stuff.
I love that. Okay, method 4 feels a bit like jumping into cold water. Start speaking before the sentence is ready.
It is, because translation loves a vacuum. It loves silence. When you pause, waiting to form the perfect sentence, that's when the old habit rushes in to fill the gap.
So you have to beat it to the punch.
You have to create momentum. The second you know you have to speak, just start, use a starter phrase.
Like,
I think, or, well, for me, or one thing is just something to get your mouth moving. Speaking creates momentum, and that forward motion physically blocks the translation loop from even starting.
and finally, method 5. This feels like the most important one, emotionally. Accept broken English.
This is the root of it all. The only reason we translate is because we're chasing perfection. We want the perfectly correct, impressive sentence.
And so we wait. And in that wait,
Translation happens. So the solution is you have to give yourself permission, like true, honest permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to sound a little clunky.
because broken English that you actually say is infinitely better than the perfect English that gets stuck in your head.
Infinitely. It's not even a contest. Communication beats perfection every time.
So when you start using these 5 methods, you'll start seeing little changes, right?
Right.
What are the first signs that it's working?
Yeah, and they're subtle at first. It might be a single word just appearing in your head without you looking for it. Or you'll answer a simple question a little faster than you expected.
You respond before you've even had a chance to think it through.
Exactly. Those aren't accidents. That's proof. That's the new pathway being built brick by brick.
But we should be realistic here. The old habit, it's not just going to vanish, is it? Especially under pressure.
No, and that's a critical point. When you are tired or nervous or stressed, your brain will absolutely try to go back to the old safe highway. That relapse is normal. It's predictable.
So what do?
You don't panic. Panicking just tells your brain, see, I told you English was unsafe. You just notice it, you take a breath, and you go back to simplicity. The relapse is just a signal to be gentle with yourself, not proof that you're failing.
Which brings us all the way back to what you said at the start. The golden rule here.
Yes, you don't remove translation, you outgrow it.
You outgrow it.
You make it irrelevant by thinking in images, by speaking early, by lowering the pressure for perfection, and just trusting the flow of communication.
It's amazing how much of this is about mindset, isn't it? It's not about memorizing more words. It's about changing the internal process.
It's all process. Translation isn't the enemy. It was a stage that helped you get here.
But stages are meant to be passed through, not lived in forever.
Exactly. The moment you stop fighting it and just start building the new thing, that's when everything changes. That's when fluency starts to feel automatic.
So if fluency is really about letting go of that need for perfection and just trusting the flow, we want to leave you with one final thought to act on, like right now.
What is one small, imperfect English interaction you can have the second this deep dive ends?
It could be an internal thought, just looking at something in your room and thinking, blue wall.
Or saying a simple starter phrase out loud to yourself, I think, and then just let it go. That immediate, tiny, imperfect action is the first step on the new road. It's you proving to your brain that English is finally the safe choice. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on a challenge that I think sits right at the heart of every single language learner's journey.
It really does.
It's that essential question, how do you stop mentally fighting for every single word in English and instead just let it flow automatically?
Yeah.
And we're not looking for quick hacks here. Our mission is to really analyze the source material you all share to understand the actual cognitive shift that's required.
And that shift is so crucial because, well, most learners are fighting completely the wrong battle.
How so?
We asked, what is fluency? And so many of you defined it as speaking without mistakes, but that obsession with perfection. The research shows it's one of the biggest blockers there is.
Okay, let's unpack that right away. So if it's not about being perfect, what is the definition of true fluency we should be aiming for based on this material?
True fluency, in this analysis, it's defined by the absence of that internal struggle.
The fun.
Exactly. It's speaking without thinking about speaking. It's when your brain has finally internalized one simple truth, that speaking English is just normal.
It stops being this big creative act you have to monitor.
Right, and starts becoming a simple automatic release.
That's a powerful change. It suggests the problem isn't a lack of vocabulary, it's a system bottleneck. So, for you listening, we're focusing on 3 major areas today. First, why speaking feels so heavy right now, that cognitive energy drain. Second, the fundamental difference between traditional practice and what we'll call effective training.
A very important distinction.
And finally, the structured, actionable stages you need to follow to build that genuine automatic flow.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with that feeling of effort. So many of you are, highly proficient in reading, writing, the grammar rules backwards and forwards.
Yep.
But when it comes to actually speaking, it still feels heavy. Why is producing language such an energy drain?
That feeling of heaviness is basically your internal barometer. It's measuring the amount of conscious control you're applying. So every time you try to build a sentence, your analytical brain, the one that learned all the verb tables, is jumping in, checking grammar, translating, picking words.
So you're saying the bottleneck isn't the lack of knowledge, it's the constant analysis of that knowledge.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Conscious control is inherently slow, and it is incredibly expensive, cognitively speaking. You're asking your analytical system to do a real-time, high-speed task, and it just wasn't designed for it.
Right.
The sources are really clear. Forcing a creative act through that narrow filter of critical analysis, it just leads to exhaustion and blockages.
This is where that typing analogy you found becomes so useful. I think everyone understands this, even if they haven't applied it to language.
Absolutely. Think back to your first time at a keyboard. You were consciously choosing every single key. Looking, thinking, deciding.
Slow, painful, so slow, and exhausting. Now, most of you probably type automatically. You think about the idea, and your fingers just react. The movement is automated.
And the key insight there is that automation happens from repetition, not from intellect. You didn't become a faster typist by, reading more books on keyboard design.
Correct. And that brings us to the most critical distinction in this entire deep dive. Automatic speech does not live in your thinking brain. It lives in your procedural brain.
Okay, let's pause right there because this neurological distinction is, I think, the most important idea in the source material. We have the analytical brain. It stores facts and rules. That's what you use for tests. But the procedural brain is something totally different.
Totally. The procedural system manages all your automated physical skills. Walking, catching a ball, driving a car, riding a bike.
Things you just do.
Things you just do. They require precise, rapid movements without you consciously overseeing them. When you tie your shoes, you don't recite the steps, your hands just do it. Speaking English automatically belongs in that same system. So if we want this procedural brain to take over the job of speaking, we can't just throw grammar books at it. What does it need to learn?
It needs 3 very specific conditions.
Yeah.
And they're basically the opposite of what the analytical brain needs.
Okay.
The procedural brain learns through repetition, familiarity, and low pressure. And here's the absolute kicker. You cannot explain fluency to this system. You have to do it.
You have to train the mouth.
You have to train the mouth, train the pattern release, just like you train your muscles to walk or type.
That distinction, the procedural brain needs doing, sets up our next section perfectly. If most of us are using analytical methods, reading, studying, for a skill that needs procedural learning,
We're basically spinning our wheels.
we're practicing in a way that doesn't lead to flow.
Exactly. The sources draw this really sharp line between practice and training. When most people say they practice English, they're often talking about things that build declarative knowledge.
Like reading, listening to a dense podcast.
Right. Reviewing vocabulary lists. And those things are wonderful for building your toolkit.
But training is about using that toolkit automatically. It's actively creating automatic responses, removing the decision-making.
Yes. Taking that grammar and vocabulary you already know and forcing the procedural system to use it on command.
It's a reflex.
It is.
Yeah.
Automatic speech appears only when the brain stops deciding which word, which tense, and starts simply reacting with preloaded structures, like a reflex action.
Okay, this raises a really common question, a sort of intuitive trap. If I push myself into high-pressure situations like a big meeting or a debate, doesn't that force me to get better faster? Doesn't pressure make the brain automate?
That is such a fundamental misunderstanding of how this system works. The sources are emphatic about this. Increasing pressure activates the great automation killer analysis mode.
How does that actually work in real time?
Okay, imagine you're driving your car, totally on autopilot on a familiar road, and suddenly a deer jumps out. What happens?
You slam on the brakes. You're suddenly thinking about everything.
Exactly. Your procedural system is overridden by your conscious, high-alert analytical system. You start thinking about steering and braking, the act is no longer automatic.
And language is the same. Pressure forces your critical mind to re-engage.
And analysis and automation cannot coexist. They just can't.
So if you're constantly in a stressful speaking environment, you're just perpetually triggering that critical overlay. This must be why so many learners say they speak better when they're casual, or alone, or on holiday.
That's the ideal environment. Automation thrives in calm environments. Calmness signals to the brain that there's no emergency, so the procedural system can stay in control.
Ease and familiarity.
That's the currency of the procedural brain.
Okay, so if calm training is the goal, the sources provide this fantastic roadmap. The 3 structured stages of automatic speech training. This is how we start building those language reflexes from the ground up.
And these stages are designed to manage fear. They reduce the cognitive load by giving the brain something small and safe to latch onto first.
Stage 1. Trigger words and phrases. What are these, and why are they so crucial?
They're the ignition switch phrases. Think of things like, I think that, or for me, the main issue is, or let me explain what I mean.
Okay.
Their value isn't grammatical, it's functional. They are short, common phrases the brain can learn to release without any conscious effort.
So they reduce the fear of just starting. Instead of beginning from zero, you're starting with a phrase that feels familiar and safe.
Precisely. It keeps the procedural system engaged. It gives you a well-worn path to the actual content of your sentence, your conversational safety blanket.
And that familiarity leads right into stage 2, which is all about pattern repetition. And again, this is not about memorizing sentences.
No, this is structural training. We're just leaning into the fact that the procedural brain learns structures best, so we focus on training common structural patterns, not individual sentences. A perfect example is the opinion reason pattern. I liked X because Y.
So how does drilling a pattern like that remove the decision-making?
Well, when you train the pattern, the brain learns that after the word because, it's obligated to provide a reason. It stops searching for the right word or worrying about the structure.
The path is already laid out.
The brain knows the next required move, so all its energy can go into the idea that fits in the slot, not the structure around it. Patterns predict the future for the brain.
That lowers the cognitive load a ton. Which brings us to the ultimate goal. Stage 3. Flow without monitoring.
This is the destination. This is where automation lives. The key rule in stage 3 is you have to speak without checking your grammar, and you have to continue despite mistakes.
It sounds so counterintuitive to just ignore mistakes, but if we go back to the procedural brain, what happens when we stop to correct ourselves?
You immediately pull the emergency brake. Stopping to correct yourself is the fastest way to pull the analytical brain right back into the driver's seat.
Flow builds automation.
And monitoring stops it.
Yeah.
You have to train the procedural brain that continuing the action, the physical act of speaking, is the #1 priority, not perfection.
That sets the stage beautifully for the most actionable part of this deep dive. Let's look at the specific, non-negotiable training exercises that force the procedural brain to take over.
Right, exercises that train continuation, not correction.
And the first one is brilliant because it directly tackles that fear of silence. The 1-minute nonstop speaking exercise.
Yeah, this one's great. You pick a ridiculously simple topic like why you like coffee, or what you bought at the store, set a timer for 60 seconds, and you just have to make sound for the entire minute.
And the rules are strict for a reason. Repetition is allowed, stuttering is fine, mistakes must be ignored.
And most importantly, silence is absolutely not allowed.
Why is that silence rule so critical?
Because silence is the procedural system signaling failure. By forcing continuous noise, we teach the procedural brain that the default state is forward motion. If you have to repeat the same 3 words to keep going, do it. You're training the continuation muscle.
I love that, the continuation muscle. Okay, exercise 2. Pattern drills without memorization.
This is where you take those stage 2 patterns and just apply brutal repetition. Take one pattern, say, I think idea is important because reason, and force yourself to apply it across 5 totally unrelated topics.
Your job, the weather.
Your city, history, a piece of music. You're not writing new sentences. You are drilling the structure until your brain just releases it without thinking.
You're creating a groove, right? Like etching a path for the thought to follow.
Exactly. The brain learns the structure through rote physical application. It bypasses the need for conscious rule recall.
And exercise 3 is the one that's the most counterintuitive, especially for competitive people. The sources say speed reduction, not speed increase. Why slow down?
Because we have to redefine success. The goal of automation is not speed. The goal is ease.
Right.
When you rush, you immediately trigger that high alert analysis system. You're trying to beat the clock, not build a habit.
Yeah.
If you consciously slow your tempo just a little, you signal to your brain that this is a safe, low-stakes environment.
Which invites the procedural brain to take over.
Rushing is a symptom of analysis. Slowing down is an invitation to flow.
Okay, so we know what we need to do. Now, what does success actually feel like? How do you, listening right now, know if you've activated the right system?
Automation feels calm. Because the procedural brain isn't weighing choices, it doesn't experience that cognitive overload that creates anxiety.
I see.
If you find yourself speaking and you think, wow, that felt easy, or I wasn't stressed out, that calmness is the definitive signal that the procedural system is in charge.
And the observations that confirm this are often surprising to the learner, right? They'll say things like, I spoke for 30 seconds, and the sentence I used actually surprised me because I didn't plan it.
That's the best sign. That means the brain released a pre-assembled structure that your conscious mind didn't have time to vet or critique. It just came out.
That's pure procedural release.
Yep.
But people also fall into traps. What are the common mistakes that block progress, even when you start doing these exercises?
The sources highlight 4 big ones. The first 2 we've touched on. Correcting yourself mid-sentence and stopping to find the perfect word. Both just kill the procedural flow.
What are the other 2 major killers?
The third is constant comparison. Comparing yourself to a perfect native speaker, which just reintroduces all that pressure and analysis. And the fourth, which is very deceptive, is practicing only silently.
That silent practice issue is so common. We're told to think through sentences in our head. Why is that destructive for automatic speech?
Because the procedural brain learns movement. It's a physical skill. It involves your mouth, your breath, the auditory feedback loop. If you only practice silently, you are just feeding the analytical, thinking brain the exact system we're trying to bypass.
You have to make noise.
You have to train the physical apparatus of speaking. Drill the pattern release with your mouth. Silence feeds analysis. Sound feeds flow.
Ultimately, this entire approach really boils down to one powerful mindset shift. You have to change the question you ask yourself when you start speaking.
Yes. Stop asking, is this sentence correct? That question throws you right back into analysis mode.
So instead, you ask.
You ask, can I continue?
Continuation builds the physical habit. The physical habit builds the procedural flow.
And flow is fluency.
So if you take away just one deep truth from this dive, let it be this.
It's that automatic speech is not something you switch on through willpower or study. It's something you grow slowly and naturally through consistent low-pressure focused repetition. You're not trying to become perfect.
Yeah.
You are just trying to make the act of speaking English feel normal.
That normalization is the key. So as you integrate these 3 stages and exercises into your routine, here's one final thought to leave you with. If the procedural brain learns driving and typing by linking those actions to physical routines.
Right, like always driving the same route to work or typing on the same keyboard.
What is one physical, nonverbal activity that you could commit to pairing with your language pattern drills this week to make the process completely routine?
Think about linking it to a predictable, low-stakes action. Could you drill your stage 2 patterns only while you wait for the kettle to boil?
Or maybe during the walk from your front door to your car.
Exactly. By associating the structured language release with a physical, everyday routine, you build that familiarity. You signal to your procedural brain that, hey, speaking English is now just another normal, safe thing we do every day.
Something to chew on. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You shared an exceptional stack of sources with us this week, and they all focus on a learning tool that is, genuinely powerful. But it's the exact tool so many ambitious language learners just reject almost instantly. Self-talk.
Right.
We know the skepticism. I feel strange, right?
Yeah.
Or inefficient. Or just, not real practice because there isn't another person there.
Exactly. You're not in a real conversation.
But the sources you sent, they make this compelling case that this exact skepticism, it's the barrier. It's what keeps learners stuck at that intermediate plateau.
It really is.
So our mission today is to really get into the science of it. We're going to unpack the neurology behind why speaking to yourself isn't just an effective tool, but in many ways, it's a superior training tool. And then we'll give you the precise strategy, the actual structure, and the rules to reprogram your brain for automatic English.
I love that framing, reprogramming the brain.
Because here's the core truth from all this material, and it's a freeing thought. Your brain learns to speak by speaking.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, it really doesn't care who is listening.
Yeah, what's so fascinating here is that this isn't about, positive thinking or some kind of motivational trip. The sources anchor this whole thing in neurology, in the science of habit formation, the brain's speaking centers. They don't need an audience to rewire themselves. They just need specific input.
And what's that input?
Repetition, delivered consistently in a safe, low-stress environment.
And self-talk creates that safest possible environment.
It's perfect. If you look at the conditions, they're kind of counterintuitive. In self-talk, your fear is low.
Basically gone.
The psychological pressure is 0, and your control over everything, it's absolute.
And you have to contrast that with a real-time conversation. We all need those eventually, of course.
Of course.
But just think about the cognitive load, the sheer amount of stuff your brain is juggling in that moment.
Oh, it's huge.
You've got the anxiety of making mistakes, the stress of trying to understand the other person, the speed, the fear of judgment.
Exactly. And when those pressures are there, the brain often just defaults to inhibition. It pumps out stress hormones like cortisol, which, it literally suppresses the function you need for smooth, spontaneous language.
So self-talk gets rid of all those fluency killers.
It eliminates them, and that allows the brain to just release the language so much more freely. It's the practice that lets those neural pathways actually myelinate.
To become fast and automatic.
Precisely.
So one of the sources got really specific about this. It talked about how the brain registers the activity, right? It said that the speaking center Broca's area, it's active whenever you formulate and articulate speech.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's internal or out loud to someone.
And that is the critical, liberating insight. Your brain genuinely does not know the difference between saying, the market is closed, to your friend.
And just whispering it to yourself as you walk by.
Yes. It only registers 2 things. 1, I am using English, and 2, crucially, nothing bad is happening.
That's the key.
That positive feedback loop English equals safety. That is the catalyst. That's what rewires your speaking habit from this effortful translation thing into an automatic release.
So we have to change our whole mindset about what this is for. Self-talk isn't about sounding fluent. It's not a performance.
Not at all.
It's a training ground. It's designed to teach your brain 3 sort of motor skills.
Yeah.
Continuation, comfort, and release.
That's a great way to put it.
If you can speak for 5 minutes to yourself without stopping, you're building the foundation to speak for 5 minutes to another person. Okay, let's unpack this a bit more, though, and get into the method. Because the source has had a huge warning here. All of those neurological benefits, they only kick in if you're doing it correctly.
That is absolutely correct. And a lot of people try it the wrong way, decide it doesn't work, and then just give up.
So what are they doing wrong? What doesn't qualify?
The sources are very clear. If you're just, say, reading aloud from a textbook or reciting dialogue you memorized from a movie.
Or repeating sentences from flashcards.
Right. You're falling into the trap of repetition without spontaneous thought.
Wait, I have to challenge that for a second. Why is just reading aloud not effective self-talk? I mean, you're still practicing pronunciation, cadence. You're using your mouth to speak English, aren't you?
You are, but you're not training the right skill. The sources make a distinction between reception and recitation on one hand and spontaneous production on the other. When you read or repeat, your brain's main job is just managing the motor output of your voice. It's not retrieving words spontaneously. Real fluency requires you to take a messy, abstract idea in your head and instantly convert it into structured verbal English. Reading doesn't train that.
So the rule is, correct self-talk has to force real spontaneous thinking. It has to be idea-based. And it has to be imperfect, because you're forcing that immediate retrieval.
Yes. The goal isn't perfect recitation. The goal is actively using the language to process your own reality, your thoughts.
And this is where people get it wrong. They overcomplicate it.
Totally. They defeat the whole purpose of low-stress practice. You don't need to, hold an imaginary debate on geopolitics.
Or explain quantum physics to your cat.
Exactly. The sources say to focus on simple internal reality. What you're doing right now, what you're thinking, how you feel, what your plan is for the next hour.
So you're saying it's actually less effective to debate a complex issue than it is to just say, I think I need to make some coffee. Why is that simple description better for building the pathway?
Because the simple thought requires less cognitive load. That frees up your brain to focus entirely on the formulation and release of the English. If you're struggling with the idea itself, your English will just stop. But if the idea is simple, I am wearing blue jeans, you're forcing the brain to practice just that seamless transfer from thought to English. That's the automaticity you're chasing. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, structuring this whole process helps. It keeps the practice from feeling aimless, and it lets you build up the complexity over time. Our sources break it down into 3 distinct levels of practice.
This is great. This is the kind of practical advice people need when they don't know where to start.
Okay, so let's start with level 1, observation self-talk. This is the easiest way in. The focus is completely external. You just describe what you see or what you're doing, no opinions, no deep thoughts.
And the sources give some really good, simple examples. We're talking about things like, I'm making coffee, or the light outside is very bright today.
I need to leave soon.
Exactly. The great thing about this level is it builds that basic English activation without any pressure at all. It's just description.
Right. It builds comfort with the basic flow. And once that feels easy, you move up to level 2, thought self-talk.
So now you shift inward.
You shift inward. You start discussing your immediate internal thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. This level introduces a bit more risk because you have to spontaneously find words for emotions, judgments.
So instead of just describing the coffee machine, you're saying, I think this is a good idea to start my day with exercise.
Or, I'm not sure about this new plan it feels. It feels too aggressive.
This task feels difficult, but I know I can do it. This level is directly training you to translate your internal world into English.
And that leads us to the most advanced level, the most powerful one. Level 3, explanation self-talk. This is where you intentionally force yourself to explain a concept or justify a decision or connect ideas together, even if it's just to yourself.
This sounds like the hardest, for sure. It forces you to use those sophisticated transition words, right? The logical connectors you need in a real debate.
It is the most challenging, but it gives you the biggest conversational payoff. You start using phrases like, the reason I decided to change my schedule is...
Or, what I mean by saying that is...
Let me explain this part to myself again to make sure I get it. You see, it forces your brain to build complex sentences and logical flow in real time. That is the definition of conversational skill. You're building the muscle memory.
This is where it gets really practical. We know self-talk removes fear and interruption, those 2 huge fluency killers. But the sources highlight one crucial rule to make this all work.
Yes, the flexibility of it, the fact that you can pause, you can repeat, you can just keep going without anyone judging you.
Yeah.
That teaches your brain a vital lesson. It teaches that English does not require perfection. And that is the anti-perfectionist training we all so desperately need.
Logistically, it's also incredibly flexible.
Yeah.
The sources stress this is perfect for dead time.
Any dead time.
You can do it walking to the bus, cooking dinner, driving.
Right before you fall asleep, right after you wake up. The place doesn't matter. Consistency is what matters.
And it doesn't have to be long sessions, does it?
Absolutely not. In fact, that's a mistake. Frequency over duration, 5 to 10 minutes every single day, rewires your brain way more effectively than one exhausting 90-minute session once a week.
Short, frequent bursts.
To establish the habit, yes.
And now for what our sources call the most powerful, the non-negotiable rule.
Yeah.
And it ties right back to that idea of training continuation. You must never, ever stop mid-idea.
This is the hard line. If you're talking and you forget a word, let's say you forget the word saucepan. The instruction is crystal clear. You do not stop. You don't switch to your native language. You immediately do one of two things.
Describe it.
Describe it. The metal thing I cook soup in, or you replace it with a word you do know, like pot. And then, and this is the most important part, you continue the original sentence.
That's a huge shift. We're all conditioned to stop, look up the word, fix the mistake.
Yeah.
But you're saying the flow matters more than the perfect word in that moment.
In this training, yes. Because stopping and switching languages reinforces a bad habit. It tells your brain to halt the flow whenever there's strain. Prioritizing continuation teaches the brain that when things get tough, the rule is to search and adapt within English, not to escape it.
Which leads right to the habits you have to avoid. Don't judge your English while you're doing it.
Don't correct every sentence.
Don't force yourself to use fancy advanced words.
And absolutely do not switch languages, not even for a single word.
The sources say self-talk has to feel easy enough to maintain the flow. If it becomes a huge strain, the brain just resists the training.
And the neurological benefit is lost. So this all leads to the ultimate question, right? What's the payoff? When does this internal practice actually show up in the real world? The sources say that after just 2 or 3 weeks of consistent daily practice, learners start to notice very specific, measurable changes.
And these outcomes are things like words just appear faster when you need them. There's less hesitation, less of that awful searching feeling.
A general sense of calm, less panic when you have to speak.
And, crucially, fewer mental translations. Because your brain is finally practicing release instead of that rigid control and constant self-review.
Which brings us back to that engine analogy. It's so important. Learners worry, if I only talk to myself, will I forget how to talk to people?
That's completely misunderstanding the process, isn't it?
Totally.
Self-talk builds the internal engine. The quick word retrieval, the comfortable syntax. Real conversations are just the road you drive on.
Right. And if you haven't built a reliable engine through this kind of low-stress repetition, no amount of white-knuckle driving practice on a busy highway is going to help you. You'll just stall.
The final mindset, then, is that you're not just talking to yourself in that kind of eccentric way.
No. You are systematically training a complex neurological motor skill. And brains learn motor skills, typing, swimming, speaking through repetition, not through academic explanation and not through finding the perfect conversation partner, through habit formation.
That really synthesizes the material perfectly. Self-talk isn't some optional extra. It's the safe neurological training ground that bypasses the fear and pressure that stops most of us from ever becoming truly automatic. So what does this all mean for you, for your path to fluency?
I think it means the most effective path forward is the one that strategically removes pressure, the one that prioritizes flow over momentary perfection.
And that leaves you with a final thought to internalize, and this comes directly from the science in these sources. If you want your brain to speak English automatically in a conversation, you absolutely must let it speak English privately, freely, and perfectly first.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are here to take that stack of source material you have, the articles, the research, all of it, and turn it into a crisp, actionable blueprint.
And today we're tackling, I think, the big one.
Oh yeah, the question we always get. I've studied the theory, I know the grammar, but why can't I just speak?
It's that gap, isn't it? The gap between knowledge and actual performance.
Yeah.
And the sources you sent over, they draw this brilliant distinction.
Right.
Knowing the grammar rules, having a huge vocabulary, that's all static knowledge. It lives in your analytical brain.
The analytical brain. So that's the conscious editor, the part of you that's, great at taking a test.
Exactly.
But just terrible at conversation, because the moment you try to speak, that editor just kicks in. It freezes you.
It introduces fear, slows everything down. Your fluency, that sort of smooth, automatic flow, doesn't even live there. It lives in the procedural brain.
The part that handles skills. Like riding a bike.
Or tying your shoes. It's basically muscle memory.
So our mission today is pretty clear then. We are going to unpack a very specific daily system. And it's not designed to teach you new grammar.
No.
It's designed to force your procedural brain to take over. We're talking about a 20 to 30-minute routine that trains the brain to just release English automatically.
And, sidestep that whole analytical fear trap.
Okay, but before we dive into the 4 stages, there's one rule. The sources say this is the foundation for everything.
Oh, this is critical. The speaking brain learns through frequency, not intensity.
That reframing is so key because people think they need to cram.
Right. They spend 8 stressed out hours on a Sunday and then burn out.
And the sources are definitive on this. 20 calm minutes every single day will absolutely obliterate 2 stressed hours once a week.
It has to feel light. If the routine feels heavy or, intimidating, the brain just flags it as a threat. It resists the change.
But if it's light and manageable,
then the brain accepts it. And it's only through that kind of low-effort repetition that the procedural system actually starts to rewire itself. It's consistency over perfection. Every time.
Okay, let's unpack this 20 to 30-minute blueprint. So there are 4 stages. 4 very specific short stages.
And the rule up front is pretty strict.
You don't skip stages and you do not mix them.
Right. Because each piece trains a totally unique neurological function that you need for speaking fluently. Think of it like a sports drill. You wouldn't mix your warm-up with your endurance run.
Right.
You'd diminish the effect of both. Each stage here is carefully sequenced.
Okay, so let's start with stage 1. English activation. This is just 5 minutes, a gentle wake-up call.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's the mental equivalent of stretching. You're just signaling to the brain, hey, English is needed today.
So low cognitive load. We're not doing heavy lifting here.
Not at all. You're just thinking in simple English and saying these micro thoughts aloud.
Micro thoughts. I love that term. So this isn't the time for a philosophical debate. It's just labeling your immediate reality. The examples in the material are great. I'm tired, need coffee.
Too much noise.
Yes.
Things like that. No full sentences required. If you skip this, you're forcing your brain to jump from 0 to high speed. And that's what causes that initial stress.
So 5 minutes of this just opens the channel, makes the next part feel less intimidating.
Exactly.
So if stage 1 is the warm-up, stage 2 feels like the real workout. This is self-talk release. 7 to 10 minutes.
This is the centerpiece, really. Its purpose is to train you to speak without fear.
And the rule is so simple, but I imagine it's incredibly hard for most people.
It is. Speak aloud, explain something simple, and do not stop.
Don't stop.
That's the core of it. This directly confronts that fear of silence. They need to correct yourself. Mistakes are okay. Repetition is okay. But silence, that free state where the analytical brain just slams on the brakes.
That's forbidden.
It's forbidden.
Yeah.
You're training your brain that just speaking continuously is the goal.
Okay, I have to challenge this for a second based on the research. If I train myself every day to just talk, even when I know I'm making mistakes, aren't I just ingraining bad habits?
That's the question everyone asks. And it's a valid one. The answer is about the timeline. The procedural brain needs volume first. It just needs to know the engine works.
It won't seize up.
Right. If you try to optimize for grammar at this stage, you just bring that analytical editor back into the room. You bring the fear back.
So we're prioritizing the release mechanism,
Okay.
the sound of your own voice just going.
Yes. And the sources offer a rescue tool for when you get stuck. These continuation phrases.
Like what?
Instead of going silent, you immediately say something like, what I mean is, or let me think. Keeps the vocal flow going.
So continuation matters more than correctness.
At this stage.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're training the neural pathways for flow.
And that flow training leads us right into stage 3, pattern flow, 5 to 7 minutes, building automatic structure.
Exactly. This is all about reducing the thinking load. Fluent speakers, they aren't just good with words. They have this huge bank of pre-built automated structures.
They're not building sentences word by word.
No, they're pulling entire frameworks off the shelf. And that's what we're training here.
And the method is super restrictive. You pick one pattern for the whole session.
Just one. For example, you might pick, I think blank because blank, or maybe the reason is blank.
So you take that single structure and you apply it to 3 or 4 totally different ideas. So I could spend 5 minutes talking about the weather, my email inbox, and my favorite sports team, all using that same, I think, because pattern.
And by doing that, you're tapping into something the brain loves. Predictability. When you reuse that structure, it stops being a conscious choice. It becomes automatic. Muscle memory.
So the structure is fixed, which frees up your brain to just focus on the content.
Yes. The pattern handles the mechanics as like a focus drill in basketball, just practicing free throws for 7 minutes. It's not glamorous, but it works.
Okay, which brings us to the last and maybe the most crucial stage. Stage 4. The calm review. 3 to 5 minutes.
The cool down. And this is all about reinforcing safety and success in the brain.
So you've just done this big workout, you've pushed your analytical brain aside, now you have to lock in that feeling.
Right, and you do that by asking specific questions. But they are not about grammar, they're about flow. Did I speak without stopping? Did I stay calm? Did I finish my ideas?
But the sources have this huge warning here, a massive one. You do not judge your grammar.
This is absolutely non-negotiable.
Okay.
If you just spend 15 minutes training your procedural brain that speaking is safe, and then you immediately switch into critical grammar analysis,
You're bringing the editor, the fear generator, right back into the spotlight.
and you're basically punishing the brain for doing the very thing you wanted it to do. You release stress hormones, and they get linked to the act of speaking English. The whole session gets registered as danger instead of success.
So it breaks the entire cycle.
It breaks the cycle. The calm review has to be about the feeling of flow and nothing else.
That makes so much sense. So now that we have the daily blueprint, let's zoom out. How does this fit into a weekly rhythm without causing burnout?
Great question. The full 4-stage system is demanding. So the sources lay out a sustainable schedule. It's a 4-2-1 rhythm.
Okay, 4-2-1. Break that down.
You do the full 4-stage system 4 days a week, then 2 days are much lighter.
2 days of just stage 2, the self-talk release.
Correct. On those 2 days, you just keep the core habit going, speaking out loud continuously, but you drop the more focused pattern work. Keeps the engine warm.
And then the rest day.
The rest day is essential. It is not being lazy. You rest from active speaking, but you keep listening. And while you're resting, your brain is consolidating everything. It's building those new pathways you trained.
So learning is happening even in the quiet moments.
For sure. But the system is also really sensitive to a few common mistakes. The sources call it ambitious chaos.
Ambitious chaos. I like that. Let's talk about those pitfalls. The first one has to be the perfectionist trap.
Oh, yeah. The person who misses Monday feels guilty and then just quits for the week.
I'll start again next month.
You have to avoid that. If you miss a day, you just pick it up the next day. No guilt. The goal is 20 minutes today, not a perfect streak.
Another mistake is trying to add grammar study into this time.
Don't do it. They're 2 different tasks, using 2 different parts of the brain. Keep your analytical study time separate. This 20 minutes is for release, not revision.
And what about that urge to sound advanced? People feel like they're not learning if they're using simple patterns.
That's the analytical editor talking again. The whole point of this system is to train usable English, not perfect English. Simple, repeatable language is the foundation for flow.
Trying to be complex just brings back the heavy thinking.
And it slows you down. It's ironic, but true. Simple, calm repetition will always beat ambitious chaos.
Okay, let's go back to the brain science for a minute. We've talked about the procedural brain, but can we summarize the 4 pillars that make this system work so well?
Yeah, the research suggests any good fluency system has to do 4 things. This blueprint hits all of them. It removes fear, it builds repetition, it trains release, and it avoids overload.
And we can trace those pillars right back to the stages. Stage 4, the calm review, is all about removing fear.
Right, by separating performance from judgment. And stages 1 through 3 are all about building repetition.
Stage 2, the self-talk, is specifically for training release.
Getting comfortable with the sound of your own voice.
And the whole 20-minute time limit, the 4-2-1 structure, that's designed to avoid overload.
It's a closed-loop system. It's designed to make speaking feel safe and sustainable, and eventually automatic.
So what about the results? If you really commit to this, what do the sources say you'll notice in, say, the first 10 to 14 days?
The changes are subtle at first, but they're profound. Learners usually report 4 things right away. Faster response times.
Less freezing.
Way less freezing. Also, less of that need to translate in your head before you speak. And maybe the biggest one, just feeling calmer when you talk.
They're noticing usable English, not perfect English.
Exactly. They're communicating more effectively and they're less stressed about it. That shift in your emotional state is a huge motivator.
Which brings us back to the habit mindset. The sources really reframe how you should measure your progress day to day.
Yeah, you have to stop asking that anxious question, am I fluent yet? It's too big. It's too abstract.
So what's the better question?
The question is, did I train my brain today? That's it. You focus on the small, completed action. That's how you build consistency.
It's a good reminder that brains change quietly. There aren't any fireworks.
No, it happens under the surface. And one day, you won't even notice until it's already happened. You'll just be speaking, and you'll realize, wow, that felt normal.
That feeling of normalcy, that's fluency.
That's the functional definition of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Effortlessness.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to turn this into reality? It means your blueprint is built, it's manageable, and it all rests on one final rule to remember when things get hard.
And this is the one to write down.
If English speaking feels hard, make it smaller, not stronger.
Trust the 20 minutes. Trust the small, frequent habits. They are the engine for the biggest changes in your brain.
Let the repetition do the work and give your analytical brain a much-needed rest. That's your deep dive into the 20-minute Fluency Blueprint. We'll catch you next time. Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are learning English, or, really any complex new skill, you know the feeling.
Oh, yeah.
It's that moment where you have the knowledge, you've done the work, you can even think in English pretty clearly, but the second you're in a high-stakes situation...
A meeting, a phone call?
A phone call, yeah, or even just talking to a stranger, it feels like your brain just shuts down. It all just grinds to a halt.
It's that freeze response.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into today, because it is so important to understand that this breakdown is not, I repeat, not a language problem.
Okay.
It's a performance anxiety problem that just looks like a language barrier. The moment your brain senses risk, it goes straight into survival mode.
So it stops caring about perfect grammar and starts caring about whether you're safe.
Precisely. Social fear, the risk of being judged, of sounding like you don't know what you're talking about, it registers in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, almost exactly like a physical threat. And if that pressure gets high enough, the nervous system just falls back on its old tricks. Fight, run in a conversation, freeze. All the knowledge is still there, but the door to get to it is temporarily locked by panic.
And that's really the mission of this deep dive then. We're going to unpack that physiological block and give you 8 really powerful, actionable techniques to train your nervous system.
Right.
The goal isn't just about learning new words, but training your brain to feel safe enough to use the words you already have, even when things get intense.
We're going beyond just, feel more motivated. We're talking about actually rewiring things neurologically using proven tactics.
Okay, so let's get right into this foundational idea because I think it flips everything on its head. Fluency under pressure is not built by confidence. It's built by exposure.
That is the starting line.
Yeah.
So many learners think, I'll wait until I feel confident, then I'll start speaking. But that waiting, that's the trap.
That's the barrier itself.
Exactly. Confidence isn't something you need to start with. It's a result. You don't get confident and then face the pressure. You face these little bits of pressure again and again, and the confidence it grows automatically because your brain is collecting proof that you survived.
This explains that really frustrating thing you see all the time, where someone with, maybe noticeably weaker grammar is just speaking so freely, owning the conversation.
While the person who knows all the rules is silent.
Yes, exactly. While the grammar perfectionist just sits there.
And that is 100% proof that knowledge isn't the problem. The confident speaker has, bit by bit, built up a history of pressure training. Their brain has been in real low-stakes situations before, many times. It has the data points it needs to say, okay, this isn't actually dangerous.
So their nervous system doesn't panic.
It doesn't panic, which leaves all those cognitive resources free to, actually put sentences together.
So if the problem is a fear circuit and the solution is collecting data, that leads us right to what you call the cornerstone of all of this, micro-pressure exposure.
Think of it like emotional weightlifting. Since your brain thinks being judged is a threat, you have to consciously give it these safe, small interactions to update its whole model of the world.
And the key is in the name, right? Micro.
The key is micro. We're not talking about a huge, scary hour-long interview. We're talking about something so small, it almost feels like it doesn't count.
Can you give us a few examples of what that really looks like? Because I think a lot of people would hear this and just try to do too much.
Oh, absolutely. The goal is always consistency over intensity.
Yeah.
So try saying just one complete English sentence to a barista, just asking where the sugar is.
Okay.
Or ask one single question in a group meeting. You can switch back to your own language right after. It doesn't matter. The whole goal is just getting that one sentence out.
And what's happening in the brain when you do that? What does that one little sentence actually accomplish?
It creates what we call a prediction error. Your fear circuit, it's predicting disaster, humiliation. But when you say the sentence and nothing bad happens,
The world doesn't end.
the world doesn't end. No one laughs. The brain learns, okay, my prediction of danger was wrong. Nothing happened. Fear doesn't go away because you think about it. It goes away because you give it repeated, safe evidence that it's wrong.
So 10 tiny moments are better than one big scary one.
Oh, 10 tiny moments are exponentially better than one big conversation where you fail and just prove the fear right. Consistency is the trainer.
That reframes the whole thing. It's just about logging these small wins. Okay, let's shift gears. If micro-pressure is the long-term training, what can you do, in the 5 minutes before a big meeting or when you feel that panic starting to rise up mid-conversation?
Right, you need something for the moment itself. We have to actively interrupt that panic signal. And the first technique is what we call pre-conversation brain priming.
You can't just walk in cold.
Never walk into a high-stakes conversation cold. It's like trying to sprint a marathon with zero warm-up.
I love that athlete analogy. A runner creates calm. They don't just hope it shows up. So what does a 60-second warm-up look like?
First, breathing. Slow, deliberate breaths. And really focus on the exhale. A long, slow exhale is the fastest biological hack to tell your nervous system it's safe.
It activates the vagus nerve, right?
That's it. It flips the switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. It actually calms your body's chemistry.
And what are you doing mentally during that minute?
Mentally, you're just greasing the wheels. Say a few simple English sentences inside your head just to warm up those circuits. And then the most important part, you give yourself a mantra. Something like, my goal is communication, not perfection.
I don't need perfect English.
I don't need perfect English. This tells your brain, look, we're ready. We have a clear mission. We can handle this. A prepared brain is so much less likely to panic.
Okay, technique 3. This one tackles something people do automatically when they panic. They try to talk faster. They just want to rush through it to make it end.
It just makes the anxiety spiral. It's completely counterintuitive, but the answer is to slow the body to speed the brain. You have to consciously force yourself to move slower and speak slower.
Slow your breathing. Slow your movements.
And, critically, slow down your very first sentence.
But I'd worry that if I slow down, I'll just look nervous. Or I don't know what I'm talking about. Why is that a sign of control?
Because slowing down literally creates space, neurological space. It's the gap between the panic impulse and your action. When you speak slowly, your brain has a chance to catch up and regain control.
You're buying yourself processing time.
You're buying processing speed, exactly.
So,
even native speakers do this when they're talking about complex things. It signals that you're being thoughtful, not that you're weak.
Yeah.
When your body slows, your brain gets the message that the crisis is over, and suddenly that vocabulary you thought was gone. It's accessible again.
That makes so much sense. It's about managing that feedback loop. Okay, now for the moment of pure terror, the blank mind. You know the word, you know it, but your brain just can't find it.
Yes. That's the amygdala basically hijacking your memory center. To get out of that, you need a linguistic escape hatch. That's technique number 4. Use safety phrases.
So these are just simple, prepackaged sentences that you don't have to think about, that you can grab even when you're stressed.
They are your conversational lifeboats, yes. Things like, that's a fantastic question. Let me just gather my thoughts for a second.
Or, how should I best explain this?
How should I best explain this? Or even, I'm not entirely sure, but here's my first thought on it.
But hold on. If I say, let me think for a second, too often, don't I risk sounding incompetent or unprepared?
Yeah, this is a really common fear. But if you actually listen to fluent, confident speakers, they use these phrases all the time.
Really?
Constantly. They're not just filler. They are pressure management tools. They buy you 5 seconds. In those 5 seconds, the internal pressure drops, and that's usually enough to unlock the word you were looking for. The other person just hears you being thoughtful, not panicking.
Okay, that's a huge reframe. Seeing them as a tool. Before we move on, there's a quick peripheral tip here about soft eye contact.
Right. If you avoid eye contact, your brain takes that as proof that you are in danger. It confirms the fear.
But staring at someone can also ramp up the stress.
Exactly. So the sweet spot is soft eye contact. You're not staring them down. You're just making gentle, periodic eye contact to ground yourself. It pulls your focus out of that internal panic and back into the actual room.
It's a physical grounding technique. Okay, let's talk about a big mental shift. Technique 5. Focus on meaning, not accuracy.
This one is non-negotiable when you're under pressure. If you're in a high-stakes meeting and you're wasting brain power checking if you use the right article, you're killing your own fluency.
Your cognitive load is just maxed out.
It's maxed out. Trying to manage grammar and communicate a complex idea at the same time is a recipe for total system failure.
But aren't you just reinforcing bad habits by ignoring grammar?
The objective has to shift in that moment. The only question you should ask is, what is the one idea I need to get across right now? When you prioritize the message, the language just silent.
Yeah.
It tends to follow.
Right.
And listeners will forgive a tiny grammar mistake every single time. What they notice is the halting, the silence. That's what breaks the connection.
That's a very freeing idea. Okay, technique 6 seems to be about the unpredictability of it all. You can't prepare for everything, so expecting to be in perfect control just adds more pressure.
And so we have to train for that uncertainty by practicing acceptance of imperfect control. You have to really internalize this idea. I might pause. I might make a mistake. And that's okay. The fight against the mistake is what does the damage.
So by accepting you might fail, you take the pressure off.
You take the pressure off. Acceptance literally relaxes your prefrontal cortex, which is where your language access lives. A relaxed brain finds words way better than a tense, defensive one. Stop fighting the mistakes, and your brain will stop fighting you.
We've covered a lot, but we have to talk about one of the absolute hardest situations for learners. Phone calls.
Oh, phone calls are brutal. They're brutal because they strip away the entire visual safety net. We rely so much on facial expressions, on body language.
All those nonverbal cues.
All of them.
Yeah.
When it's just a voice, the stress on the brain can just skyrocket because it's lost all this data that tells it things are okay.
So to prepare for that, we need technique number 8, which is practice voice-only English.
You have to train your brain to work without those visual aids. You can do this by, say, talking in English to yourself while you're walking. Or practice speaking without looking in a mirror.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or even try this. Close your eyes and describe the room you're in out loud in English. This forces your brain to rely only on your voice and your thoughts. It makes real phone calls feel so much less terrifying because it's a context your brain has been in before.
That's great practical advice. Okay, finally, let's talk about what happens after the conversation. The natural tendency is just to beat ourselves up, right? Replaying every little mistake.
And that self-judgment is so destructive. You're basically taking the conversation and filing it in your brain as a trauma. It just makes the fear circuit stronger for next time. We have to use technique 7, replay, not regret.
So what's the difference between productive reflection and just regret?
Regret is emotional.
Yeah.
It's that feeling of, oh, I should have said this, and you just attach all this negative feeling to the memory. Reflection is analytical. It's calm.
Yeah.
You sit down afterward and you replay it quietly, but you focus on the data. What one sentence did I say pretty well? What part actually worked? How could I phrase that one difficult point a little differently next time?
So you're turning it from a failure into a lesson plan.
Precisely. Reflection trains your skill. Regret just reinforces your fear. You have to choose reflection every single time. Yeah. That's how you turn a painful experience into actual hard-won knowledge.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, the big idea here is that pressure doesn't really go away. It's always going to be part of performing. The real goal is to train your nervous system to operate effectively inside that pressure.
To move from that automatic freeze response to a controlled analytical one.
And that training isn't about some sudden burst of motivation. It's just about repetition. It's micropressure, it's daily exposure, and it's that calm, analytical look back afterward. That's the recipe. That is the concrete way you rewire your brain for fluency when it actually counts.
So what does this all mean for you? I think the key insight we've uncovered is that the most fluent speakers aren't just naturally fearless. They are simply people who have trained their nervous system to handle the pressure. So maybe you can start to think about how many of the mistakes you worry about are actually just evidence that your training is working. Every time you speak and survive, you are giving your brain proof that speaking English is fundamentally safe. Keep racking up those small wins.
So if you're listening right now, I'm willing to bet you share that deep and, let's be honest, often frustrating desire to speak English confidently, fluently.
Oh, absolutely. It's a universal feeling for learners.
And maybe you've hit that wall. You know the grammar, you've got the vocabulary down, but when it's actually time to speak, everything just locks up.
It freezes. That's the word we hear all the time.
Exactly. Well, the source material we're diving into today takes a very different approach to this problem. It's not another grammar book. Instead, it lays out this structured, really clear and practical 90-day system.
And it's designed specifically to bypass that internal panic. To, and this is the key phrase, rewire the brain for fluid conversation.
Rewire the brain. I love that. Let's stick with that idea for a second.
We should, because it's the core concept. The sources are very clear that most learners don't fail because of a lack of effort. I mean, they're often pushing themselves incredibly hard.
Right, they're studying for hours.
Hours. But they fail because they lack a system their brain can actually trust. You see, fluency, in this context, it's not about knowing more rules. It's a psychological shift.
Okay, a psychological shift. What does that mean in practice?
It means that fluency arrives quietly. It happens when your brain finally accepts speaking English as a normal activity.
Not an emergency.
Precisely. Not an urgency event. If you keep trying random apps, random methods, you're being inconsistent. And your brain, in that confusion, just defaults to the safest option it knows.
Which is silence.
Silence. This plan is designed to remove that confusion and give you a behavioral structure that feels predictable and therefore safe.
And that structural clarity is exactly what we want to unpack in this deep dive. Our mission today is to break down this entire system for you. We're going to look at the 3 distinct 30-day phases.
The surprisingly specific daily routines.
And most importantly, the key psychological engineering, as the source calls it, that removes that fear factor from the equation.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with the foundational truth here, because the way this plan defines success, it really changes the whole game. When we talk about a 90-day goal, what exactly is fluency according to these sources?
This is probably the most important thing to get right from the start. The sources are so deliberate about this definition. Fluency is explicitly not speed.
Okay, not speaking fast.
It is not having a perfect accent, and it is absolutely not error-free perfection.
So what is it then?
Fluency is what happens when your brain stops blocking you. That's it. Think of your brain as this hyper-vigilant gatekeeper.
Okay.
And as long as that gatekeeper associates speaking English with stress or potential embarrassment or judgment, its prime directive is your safety, not your communication.
So it will actively suppress your speech to keep you safe.
It will slam the gate shut.
That makes so much sense. That feeling of the words just freezing on your tongue, that's the physical alarm bell.
That's the gatekeeper in action.
So if we're dealing with a psychological barrier, a gatekeeper, how do we convince it to? Well, to just relax. The methodology identifies 4 pillars to create this unblocked state, right?
Absolutely. The 4 pillars are safety, repetition, continuation, and calm exposure. And if you miss that first step, safety, the entire structure just crumbles.
It doesn't matter how much you know.
You can have all the vocabulary in the world, but if that threat response is active, you'll never access it when you need it.
I have to pause here because I know what people are thinking. A lot of listeners feel they need 2 hours of intense study every day to make any real progress. The time commitment in this plan is, it's pretty small.
It is. And the source material addresses that skepticism directly. This is where the whole philosophy pivots from studying harder to training smarter.
Train smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Language acquisition isn't like memorizing historical dates. It's much more like a motor skill. It's like learning to ride a bike.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means the brain requires focused, high-quality, systematic exposure to build those neural pathways. It doesn't need 6 hours of fragmented, stressful effort. It needs consistency.
So we're moving past an academic model and into more of a behavioral training model.
A highly focused one, yes.
All right, let's unpack that systematic training. Let's start with the most critical psychological step. Phase 1. This is called safety and release, and it covers days 1 through 30.
And it has one singular non-negotiable goal.
Which is?
To teach the brain that speaking English is safe. Not perfect, not brilliant, just safe.
So the premise is that if you don't establish that safety first, you'll always freeze under pressure. In a job interview, on a phone call.
In any situation that actually matters, you'll always revert to your old programming. So this phase is designed to surgically remove all pressure. Completely.
It's about training the internal habit of just letting the words out.
Regardless of how correct they are.
So what does a learner focus on for these first 30 days to build that new habit?
The focus areas are really specific. First, activating self-talk. Second, cultivating what the source calls micro-thoughts in English.
Micro-thoughts.
Yeah, just tiny, simple observations in your head. The sky is blue. I need coffee. Just turning on the English channel internally. Then embracing slow speech. And finally, prioritizing idea completion.
What does that mean, idea completion?
It means it doesn't matter how polished the sentence sounds. The only thing that matters is that the idea successfully made it from your brain, through your mouth, and out into the world. You got it out. That's the win.
And the real genius here, I think, is that the time commitment is so small but so targeted. We're talking 15 to 20 minutes a day.
That's it.
So walk us through that phase 1 routine, because the internal rules you have to follow are just paramount.
Okay. The routine begins with just 5 minutes of what's called English activation. This isn't really a task, it's more of a commitment.
A mindset.
A mindset, yes. You just consciously run simple English thoughts through your head during the day. You're just turning the internal monologue switch on.
Then we get to the core behavioral change mechanism, the self-talk release. This is for 7 to 10 minutes. And the rule here, the critical non-negotiable rule, is no stopping and absolutely no correcting.
And I'll tell you, for many perfectionist listeners, this will feel like torture.
I can imagine.
And that feeling, that discomfort, is actually proof that the training is working. You're engaging in what's called habit reversal training.
Habit reversal, how does that work?
Well, by forcing yourself to continue speaking despite making errors, you are actively severing the neurological link between the word mistake and the feeling of threat.
Oh, interesting.
When you stop yourself to correct a mistake, you're reinforcing to that gatekeeper brain that the mistake was dangerous. It was something to be feared. But when you deliberately continue speaking through the error,
the brain just logs it as harmless data.
Exactly. It's a harmless data point. You're decoupling judgment from expression.
You're reframing mistakes as just noise, not catastrophic failure. And the final step is essential too. A short, calm reflection, only 3 to 5 minutes.
And you're only allowed to ask yourself 2 very specific process-oriented questions.
Which are?
Did I continue? And then stay calm.
That's it. No grammar check.
0. There's no space for grammar checks, vocabulary critiques, or any self-judgment. You're only reinforcing the success of the process itself.
So by day 30, after a month of this systematic, low-pressure work, what's changed for the learner?
The learner notices several really powerful psychological shifts. They feel less anxiety, they notice faster word recall, even in just spontaneous thought.
The need to translate in your head starts to go down.
It reduces significantly, and there's just a general sense of calmer thinking in English. Now, the source stresses this is not fluency yet.
Right.
But it's freedom. The internal gate is unlocked, and that fear response is significantly dampened.
That freedom, that's the perfect setup for the next pivot. So if phase 1 unlocked the gates, phase 2, which is automation and flow from days 31 to 60, must be about, what, turning the key and walking through?
That's a great way to put it. We shift entirely to skill building. Since the brain is no longer locking up in panic, we can now focus on efficiency.
Okay, so what are the key areas for this phase?
The focus is on identifying and using speaking patterns, maintaining continuation, drastically reducing the self-monitoring of your own speech.
That inner critic.
Muting that inner critic, and establishing a natural, sustainable pace. We're moving from just getting permission to speak to building high-quality production.
And the routine gets a little longer now, 20 to 25 minutes. Let's look at the first step, because it introduces a crucial element called pattern flow. What does that actually look like in practice?
So this is a 5 to 7 minute drill, and it's all about repetition, but not repetition of vocabulary words. It's repetition of structure.
Okay, so a grammatical structure.
Yes, you select one complex speaking pattern, for example, the third conditional, like if I had known X, I would have done Y.
A tricky one for a lot of people. So you don't just practice that one phrase, you apply the structure over and over again.
Exactly. You just keep applying the pattern to different topics, different scenarios. If I had known the bus was late, I would have walked. If I had known the meeting was canceled, I would have slept in.
I see. So you're hardwiring the grammatical structure into your motor memory?
So it becomes an automated unit. It requires far less conscious thought to assemble it when you're in a real conversation. This is the real difference between knowing a rule and being able to use it automatically.
And after that pattern training, there's 10 minutes of nonstop speaking. Still allowing for mistakes, I assume.
Still allowing mistakes. It's all about building comfort in that flow state, building momentum and endurance.
Right. And then the final 5 minutes is a light review, still with very specific questions.
Very specific. The only assessment is, was my speech flowing? We're not measuring perfection. We're measuring velocity and rhythm.
By day 60 then, 2 months in, what kind of qualitative change is the learner experiencing in their real-world attempts to speak?
The change is pretty significant. Learners start to experience speaking without having to plan every single sentence beforehand.
That's huge.
It is. They have fewer of those blank moments because the automatic patterns start to kick in. Sentences are smoother, they connect more naturally, and confidence starts growing organically.
Because the process feels automatic, not forced or calculated.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final and I think most crucial phase. Phase 3, pressure integration. Days 61 through 90. This is the ultimate test, right? Taking that safe, automated internal system and introducing it to real-world stress.
Conversations, work meetings, phone calls, public speaking.
And the key, as always, is maintaining that state of calmness, even if what you're saying isn't perfect.
We've built the engine in phase 1, and we've perfected the transmission in phase 2. Now we're putting the vehicle on the highway. We have to bridge that gap between the comfortable practice room and real-life pressure.
So what are the focus areas here? It sounds like we're moving into tactics.
It's very tactical. We're looking at micro-pressure exposure, deliberately practicing safety phrases to buy yourself thinking time.
Safety phrases, like what?
Yeah. Simple things like, "That's a great question, let me think for a second," or "Can you clarify what you mean by," just tools to manage the conversation calmly.
Got it.
Then developing calm recovery strategies for when you inevitably make a mistake. And finally, just maintaining mental presence in the conversation itself, rather than being stuck in your head.
This really does sound like a kind of exposure therapy, designed to immunize the learner against panic. How does the final routine, which is 25 to 30 minutes, create this necessary friction?
It starts with 10 minutes of scenario practice. This is high-stakes rehearsal. You aren't just chatting about your day anymore.
You're rehearsing specific, challenging moments.
Exactly. Formulating a complex interview answer, summarizing a project update for your boss, arguing a position. You're rehearsing the language that carries real weight.
And then, most critically, the sources mandate daily real exposure.
Daily. It has to be a commitment to one small, real English interaction every single day.
It doesn't have to be a job interview, though.
Oh, not at all. It could be as simple as ordering food, asking a stranger for directions, or sending a focused email that requires a bit of thought. The goal is just to consistently bring the system into contact with reality.
So the brain generalizes that feeling of safety from the practice room to the real world.
That's the mechanism.
And the final step is a dedicated 10-minute reflection period.
Yes, but again, highly focused to reinforce success. The questions are simply, what worked and what stayed calm?
You're always reinforcing the process, not the outcome.
Always.
So after these 90 days of structured training safety, then automation, then integration, what is the final transformation? What does usable fluency actually look and feel like for the learner?
Well, learners report that they can speak calmly even when they're under direct pressure. Their confidence feels authentic. It's not forced. Their responses feel more natural because they're accessing those automatic structures we talked about.
And there's just a genuine comfort in using the language.
A genuine comfort using English in all sorts of different settings. The fluency has become usable because the brain has completely internalized the whole process as non-threatening.
What's so fascinating here, listening to you break this down, is that the most profound change after 90 days, it isn't actually about vocabulary count or some massive leap in grammar level.
No, although those things do follow naturally. The biggest change is identity.
Identity.
The internal monologue completely shifts. The person stops thinking, I'm blocked or I'm bad at speaking English. They start thinking, I can express myself and I'm comfortable communicating.
That behavioral change, that dropping of the internal monitor, that feels like the real win.
It is the win.
You stop analyzing every word coming out of your mouth, which is just exhausting. You stop fearing every mistake because you've literally trained your brain to ignore them as threats. And crucially, you stop freezing.
The system you built allows your speech to flow, and your nervous system finally just permits it.
The journey from being blocked to being functionally fluent is so clearly less about inconsistent motivation and far, far more about a systematic methodology.
Which really raises an important question for you, the listener, to sort of mull over. Consider how much time you may have wasted over the years just studying grammar rules that you couldn't actually apply under pressure.
Versus the time spent training your brain specifically for safety and for automaticity.
Right. And then maybe ask yourself this. If a structured, systematic 90-day plan can unlock this capability in language, what other complex areas of your life, be it, professional skills, physical training, complex new habits, what are you leaving up to inconsistent motivation instead of applying disciplined, systematic behavioral training?
If you're listening to this and realizing, maybe my English was never the real problem, you're already on the right path. Because today you learn something important. Fluency isn't about knowing more English. It's about training your brain to allow English.
You don't need to become someone else to speak confidently. You don't need perfect grammar or a perfect accent. You need calm repetition, patience, and the courage to continue. And that is something you can build, starting today.
So here's your next step. Don't wait for confidence. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Today, speak one idea in English. Tomorrow, speak another. And let your brain learn that nothing bad happens when you do.
If this episode helped you understand yourself better, stay connected with us. Subscribe to English Speak Pulse and make brain-based English training part of your daily life. Not a source of pressure, but a source of progress.
And if you know someone who understands English, but freezes when they try to speak, share this episode with them. Because sometimes all a person needs is the right explanation and the right system.
Your voice is already there. Your English is already there. Now it's time to train your brain, to let it come out.